Hello everyone, my name is Jerry and I'm going to be doing a tutorial today, my first tutorial on programming sounds for the Sequential REV 2. We're going to start out with Subdivisions by Rush off the 1982 classic album Signals. Geddy Lee used an Oberheim OBX for most of the sounds on this song, or two of the sounds, and then he used a Mini Moog for the third sound. So first thing we want to do is set our default patch, and what I do is I hit down and then hold, and boom, we're in default. First thing I'll also be past that I want to do is go into the miscellaneous program or parameters, and there's a problem that I have here. I don't like the key mode set to low, so I'm going to set that to high, last R rather. If you set it to low and you're using a sustain pedal, it gets kind of weird. So that's the first thing I'm going to do. Now, before we go any further, there's no modulation destinations here. So we're not using that section at all. Obviously, no arpeggiator or sequencer, and there's no LFO. So now we'll start getting into the parameters that we are going to modify, and we'll get started with the oscillator. Most of you are familiar with the basic program. Subdivisions probably would not have become the classic it is if Geddy had settled for that. So we're going to move to the oscillator section here. I'm going to work starting over on oscillator mix. I'm going to go ahead and put that at 50-50, roughly right up the middle there, so I've got both oscillators. Oscillator 1 is set to a sawtooth. Oscillator 2 also set to a sawtooth. Still not getting much love out of that right there, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the fine tune of oscillator 2 and put it at 17. It's getting a little sweeter there. I'm also going to take the slop, the oscillator slop, and I'm going to set that to 12. All right. Now we're starting to get a little bit closer. Other things in this section here, the shape, we do not mess with the shape. It's just going to be the default setting for the sawtooth shape, which would just be that. It would just be 0. No sub-octave and no noise. All right, so now we get to the filter section. And for the filter, the cutoff we want at 96. Seems a little low, you say, right? Don't worry, we'll get there. So 96. All right, we need no resonance. Envelope amount to 127. Now we're really low. All right, decay, we're going to set that at 55. The attack is not something we need to mess with. So attack at 55. Sustain 20. You're coming in now. And decay also, oh no, we already did decay. Sustain 20. Release at 81. And key amount we should have at 17. And there, we're getting very close. Moving on to the amplifier section, or the envelope number 1. Pan spread is to your taste. I don't even remember where I set mine. The envelope amount, 127. Attack, 0. Velocity, 0, because it's an Oberheim OBX was not touch sensitive. No delay. Attack, 0. You don't have to mess with the decay and sustain, just use the default. Set your release to 81. Last thing we need to do for this the sound is the effects. So I'm going to select a chorus, and the default chorus on this, I don't know why they decided to make it so crazy. Hey, you know, heads up to Dave Smith, come on. Slow that same thing down. That sounds so, oof. So I'm going to set the rate to 28, and mix, I've got, or the depth rather, at 70. And the mix at 42. All factors of 7. It's just kind of good luck for me. And there's our sound. But wait, there's more. For example, once it gets to 4/4, there's a layered sound. So he's going along like this. And then this comes in. Right? And that sound you're hearing mixed in is a choir. From the Oberheim OBX, an analog choir sound. He also uses that on the very next song on the album, Analog Kid. So I'm going to teach you how to program the analog choir sound in this board and how to layer them. All right, so to get this other sound, I'm going to hit Edit Layer B. First I'll set a default. We'll go to Edit Layer B. Okay. We're back to basic program, so what I'll have to do is do this on a separate program, but you're going to pretend it's Edit Layer B. So what we're going to do here, again, not much of a great sound. There is, the first thing I'm going to do is miscellaneous parameter, set that key mode to last R. There's no LFO, I believe, on this one. Nope, no LFO. No, none of this up here. For the oscillator section, mix is straight up the middle again. And then we want to put these on pulse waves, both oscillators. Oscillator 2, we're going to give it a fine tune of 14. Then we're going to take our shape mods. Shape 1 is at 28%. The other one is at 82%. And then oscillator slop is at 17. No suboctave, I believe. Oh no, we do have a suboctave in here, 127. No noise. One more thing I forgot on oscillator before we move on is we need to move oscillator 1 frequency up an octave to where it's at C3. So far not sounding so great, but we're going to go to the filter section, cut off at 110. We're going to also, we're going to mess with the resonance. And the resonance, this is where we're looking for our sweet spot here, is at 59. And then release is at 72. And that's all we need for the filter section. So now we go attack on this, we're getting into the amplifier section, is at 68. So we go to 68 here. And release, I'm going to match it with the release on the filter envelope, and we'll bring that to 72. Last thing we need to do to this is to add a chorus. So again, we select the chorus. We don't like that. I'm going to set the rate to 14. All right, come on, 14. There we go. The depth to 100. And the mix at 64, straight up the middle there. And there's your sound. Geddy Lee actually uses this sound on 3 different songs that I can think of off the top of my head. Subdivisions, Analog Kid, and then the subject of my next video, which will be Between the Wheels. He layers that with a sound. So for Analog Kid, you have this. And the layered sound for Subdivisions is. So now I'm going to show you how to get the solo sound, which Geddy Lee used the Mini Moog on. We're going to default now. So we hit down and hold simultaneously. This is going to be going into solo mode. And I'm going to come back over to miscellaneous parameters. And I'm going to do a couple things here. I'm going to take the key mode all the way up to last R. And then I'm going to take my parameters over. In unison mode, I'm going to say 2 voices. All right, so for our modulation mix, we have unison on. We have the glide rate set at 86. And we're going to get into source 1 here on modulation. So you're going to go to mod slot 1. Source is going to be pressure. You could also use mod wheel for this. Obviously, Geddy Lee used the mod wheel on the Mini Moog, but I prefer the pressure. The amount is 0, and then both oscillator frequencies is going to be, you're going to use oscillator all frequency for the destination. In order to use the modulation, we got to use the LFO. So I'm going to go to LFO 1. I'm going to set destination to mod slot 1. So mod 1. The amount is going to be, hold on, I gotta look at my notes here. The amount is 7. And the frequency set right up the middle, about 75. And so there. Already sounded kind of cool. Moving on to the oscillator section, we're going to leave it at the default. Oscillator 1 and 2 are going to be, just leave those alone as far as the frequency. However, the fine tune of oscillator 2 is going to be +2. Oscillator mix at 50%. We're using saw waves, I believe, on both. And you can hear, it almost sounds like a flanger built into that just because we've detuned oscillator 2 slightly. And that's just classic Geddy Lee sound right there. And then oscillator slop, I do not believe, oh yeah, we have slop at 18. There we go. We do have oscillator slop. No noise, no suboctave. We're done with the oscillator section. One thing I forgot to mention in the first 2 sounds is that everything's in 4-pole as well as this one. I have this in 4-pole as well. I have the cutoff set at 135. And that's it for the filter. So it takes a little bit of the edge off, and that's it for the filter section. You don't need to do anything with the rest of these knobs. Onto the amplifier section, this is real simple. Attack 24. We're going to go 24 on the attack and 23 on the release. Actually, you can just match it to 24. We're pretty much good to go there. Moving on to the effects section, I've selected a mono delay. The mix is 15. So not a whole lot of it into the mix here. The parameter for time is 58. And feedback 35. And that should give us our sound. Except we need to put the glide back in. So there we go. There we go. So I forgot to turn the glide on earlier, so now we've got it. There you go. That is the solo sound for Subdivisions.